Thrive Guys, episode 10, A Love Letter to Notion.
So what have you been doing this week? Talk to me.
Do you know what? Do you know sometimes you have a week where you feel as though you don't really achieve anything, right? And you feel like, okay, I've kept the wheels turning this week. And so I got to like Friday afternoon and I was like, God, have I actually like moved the needle this week? And so part of my process is a weekly review, and we're going to come to that as part of this session today, because believe it or not, I record all of this in Notion. And actually, I've done so much this week outside of kind of core selling stuff. So actually, I've had a really productive week. And, you know, there's one of the things that I did, that's my win of the week this week. But there was some other stuff that I did for an event at work where I had to splice together some video content and narrate over it. And I got some great feedback on that from the marketing team. They were like, "You're so good at this." And it's like, well, I've got the equipment and I've got the voice for it. I've got the radio broadcaster voice for it. And
that was some feedback I received, and that was the issue. Nobody said, "You know what, Dan, you sound so rugged and handsome on the podcast." They said, "That Joey's got a voice for podcasts." So I just thought, a voice for it. You know, thanks for the feedback. I'll take that on the chin. I was born this way.
Thanks for the absence of feedback of anything to do with me, but I'm glad you like my friend's voice. You know, not even the content, not even that we're doing a good job with the content that we're talking about. Just that I sound like a late night radio presenter. Today on 97.6, we're going to play Agatha Christie's. Oh no, that's not a singer, is it?
No, it's a book, an author.
Well, okay, there we go. We're going to do a reading of Agatha Christie's Poirot. Does she do Poirot?
I don't know, but we've been cancelled after episode 2 because you're going solo, I think.
Yeah, sounds like it. So, but yeah, so you know, I think my takeaway from that, I suppose, is my weekly review is so important. It helps me, you know, ground myself in actually, you did move the needle this week. It may not have been in the way that you had thought or kind of feel in a kind of a gut feel sort of way, but it's important to take stock and reflect so that, you know, you can keep your mindset in a positive place. So that's what's been going on in my week. What about you?
I'm at the final hurdle for that song I've been working on, which feels good. It's potentially going to be in the charts. I had a call about it last night or the night before.
Wow.
Sorry, I haven't got my calendar in front of me.
Well, you don't know what day it is.
I do know what it's podcast day, but I don't know what day. I don't know what day of the week it is. But it'd be nice to have some like further meaningful credits, because on this record I played bass, drums, piano, organ, backing vocals, and I produced the track. So
that's brilliant.
It feels like I learned a lot as well in the process, with a lot going back and forth, and you know, I think we spoke about it before about just like taking, you know, input from people where they say, "Do you know what, I want to add this sort of guitar," and I always just say yes to it. And like they sent me a steel guitar, you know, like a country style steel guitar, and it just really, I don't know, it melded the track together. As soon as I put it on, I was just like, yes. And when you hear that, somebody says, "I've got a steel guitar for you," I just thought, what the juice?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I put it on, it sounded great.
You don't hear that very often.
No, it was quite unique.
Brilliant.
I also got a new coffee table again for like the 8th time this year, because we just cycle through them. We buy one, we give one away. We buy one, we give one away.
I think it's kind of the sign of the times where we want to, you know, change our environment in some way. I mean, when this episode comes out, we'll likely be broadly out of lockdown. Broadly, touch wood, etc. But when we're recording this, we are still in the midst of lockdown, and I think there's something to be said about wanting to change your environment because you're not able to move to a different environment, if you see what I mean. So, you know,
100%. And I'm happy with it. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I've actually, I think we spoke about this before, but it kind of feels like my house is now turned into a coffee shop. So eventually, once we're allowed people around and stuff like that, the opening of my new coffee shop will be open, you know, there'll be a grand opening.
I expect to get the first invite.
Correct.
Good.
It's in the post.
Not only because I am one half of the Thrive Guys, but also because I probably like coffee more than most of your other friends.
Well, I don't want you to come around and start reviewing my damn coffee.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to hear a podcast episode where you start slating my coffee because I'm drinking instant. So talk to me. What's your win of the week?
Well, I was just about to say, it's a good time to start our Win of the Week segment. So for those of you who have not listened to us before, this is a segment where we get to share something that's happened this week that we'd like to celebrate, just to make sure that we start our conversation on a positive note. And because likely what we tend to do is go into some self-reflection, and sometimes that can go into various different places. Today is not that episode, but it's still a great opportunity to do Win of the Week. And listeners out there, if you want to share your Win of the Week with us, please feel free to do so. We're on Twitter at Thrive Guys Pod, and we're on Instagram at Thrive Guys Pod. We want to hear your Win of the Week, so feel free to reach out and share it with us. So my Win of the Week is I published my first article on Thrive Guys, and I'm not a writer. I have never had any, writing training or anything like that. But one of the reasons why I wanted to share my thoughts with the world by doing Thrive Guys is, I feel like I have something to say about things, and I feel like I have something to contribute to that community. And it's off the back of the discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago about learning from failure. And I shared on that episode a couple of different stories for my perception of where I failed in my life and what I learned from it. And I wanted to kind of consolidate that into a piece of writing so that people had a different way of experiencing my tragedy. And so it's my first foray into writing, and I'm actually really pleased that I finished it. I don't know whether it's any good. And
it is.
Actually,
it is. I'm subjective. I know we're friends, but I'm honest with you, and I enjoyed reading it, and I enjoyed experiencing it. It's hard to share failure, as we found out with my stutter in that episode, where I'm a bit like, I did fail at one point. I failed many times, but
I don't know whether that's on the cutting room floor yet, so we'll find out, won't we? I'm going to leave that in now just for continuity. So there we go. No. So you've stuffed yourself.
I have indeed.
And look, I appreciate the good feedback. And actually, Kaylee, my other half, she was and is an editor. She was a sub-editor for a magazine, and she now on scripts in the film industry and kind of is a development exec type person. And she had a look at it, and she didn't actually make that many changes, and she really enjoyed it as well. So, I guess the output wasn't the focus, right? The outcome wasn't necessarily the point. The process was the point, and getting to a point where I had something, but going through the process of doing that was where I got the most value. Now it's out there. It's almost like it's a flash in the pan. It's done, and that's it.
And it's repeatable. You've got a format, and it's a really nice format in terms of like putting an image in there to give that sort of relation to what you experienced. I know there was the picture of you playing on stage, and it's like it's not necessarily like proof, but it's nice that people can kind of see where you were at and what it was proof. Like.
The receipt is there. I did actually do what I said I did. But yeah, so that was my win of the week. I'm pleased to have got started with writing, and I'm going to be doing more and more of it as the weeks and months go on. It's something to do. So yeah, that's me. What about you? What's your win of the week?
Well, this was going to be my first week where it was a singular win, I believe, which was going to be that I've actually spent my week in the evenings just putting all of my transactions into a readable format in a really, really great platform to work out profit and loss in a way that kind of I understand personally.
Right.
Because I'm not a big numbers guy, I'm not a big finance guy, but it's a hobby for me. Like I've got some money in crypto, and I've got some money in stocks just because I enjoy it. I don't really gamble in terms of like lottery tickets. I don't go to casinos, and that's kind of just where I get my fun from.
Your buzz.
Yeah. So I put all my transactions into a really nice readable format, and I actually shared it with a couple of my friends that are doing the same sort of thing. And all you do is you have a table in terms of you can add what currency you're looking at, whether this is stocks or whether this is crypto. You can put how much you invested into it, and then what your sell limit is and stuff. So you don't have to think about it, because I found that when I was doing stocks and stuff like that, it was quite stressful in terms of working out when to sell.
Right.
So it takes the emotional side out of it, because it's all just a numbers game. You go, I want to sell it when it's worth this amount. And that's it. You set your limit sell. You tick a box saying I've set my limit and I'm done. Right. I don't wake up and think I better check that. If it goes through, then I get some more money. So that was my win of the week. I think it looks really cool. It's been repeatable. It's been shared. I said that this was going to be my singular win of the week. until I looked at your show notes this week and I noticed you changed your format to match my wonderful formatting. And it made me smile. I looked at it and I thought, do you know what? And it's kind of, I don't want to push too far into Notion right away, but that was one of the benefits, is like our workspace is super tidy and we were able to work collaboratively. And that was a win for me, because I just looked into there and I thought, good work. Look at those titles and look at those subjects that we're talking about, because normally we just kind of put our own notes in either side and we talk about them. We have different, different points of view and different ways we want to discuss these different subjects. And it was nice to see that you'd kind of taken on board the format that I'd use, so we can have, a similar structured conversation as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of keeping up with the Joneses for me, because I don't tend to, go deep when I'm writing an outline in terms of formatting. I don't tend to really get under the aesthetic of it. I just need to get thoughts down on paper, digital paper, Then I saw yours and I was like, all right, mate, wind your neck in. I'll show you what aesthetic looks like. A lot of my motivation is based on rage and jealousy.
And winning.
And winning and competitiveness. Yeah, exactly.
It's my win of the week.
I was only going to do one win of the week this week, but my second win, which I was going to keep in my top pocket because I saw that you did too, because you're a greedy mother brother, was actually inspiring you off of the back of our conversation last week to jump back into the rabbit hole that is Notion, which is partly why we're talking about it today. So I thought actually it'd be a good segue into the main topic of conversation today. So just to provide some context to those who didn't listen to last week's episode, we got into some detail around our journeys with the productivity applications that we used over the years. And we both shared our journeys with Notion. And I love that conversation inspired you to jump back in. And I couldn't help but think, what better way to follow up on that conversation than to talk about how we use Notion today to make our lives better. So we're going to go through the various things that we use Notion for and how those things have enriched our work or personal lives, and perhaps share what we may be thinking about moving into Notion in the future. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I think before we start, it's worth just recapping what Notion is for people who've never heard of it. So Dan, why don't you just give us a brief synopsis of what the hell this thing is and why people are so excited about it?
It's the best productivity tool of, I would say, 2019 onwards for me. But Notion is basically an application that provides components such as notes, databases, Kanban boards, wikis, calendars, and reminders. So users can connect these components to create their own systems for knowledge management, note-taking, data management, project management, among others.
So that's what they say about themselves, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And the thing is, it's everything all in one. Like, I can't solo it down to what this product is. It's just an amalgamation of great things for note-taking, for data storage, for everything.
Yeah.
I'm baffled by it. I love it.
So I was listening to an episode of the Mac Power Users, which is another podcast on a different network, Relay FM. This is a piece of follow-out to anyone who likes what we do. Actually, go listen to that. It's a great show. And they interviewed August Bradley, who I'm probably going to talk about quite a bit in this session, because his videos got me into the Notion that I use now. And he put what Notion is really, really well. So I'm going to share that with you. So Notion is at the point now where it's beyond sort of an app or a product or that kind of thing. It's not like a single-use product that you just pick up off the shelf. It's more like a development platform. So you can essentially create your own software within the toolkit to do ultimately whatever you want, right? With a combination of all of those components that you mentioned earlier. So notes, databases, wikis, and all the above. But all of these components interconnect with each other.
For sure.
And I think that is the linchpin that makes this super powered.
Well, it's like if you pick from that list. Personally, if I pick from that list, I use all of those functions that I listed.
Yeah.
I use all of them in tandem with each other. they all work so well collaboratively, and I don't even notice. Like if somebody says, "Can we store this piece of data?" I'm literally like, "Yeah." How do I want to do that? Do I want to do it in a to-do list form? Do I want to do it in a Kanban? Do I want to build a database for this? And I just kind of at that moment go, right, I'll do a database for that because that's the best way to store it.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, right, I need to load up a page that's going to do something else or load up a different application.
Yeah. It's really hard to encapsulate what it is, right? Let me give you some examples and some elements that, dear listener, if you are a user of a to-do list app or a note-taking app, or this is the secret sauce that should make you at least consider taking a look, right? So within any database block, you have a property called a relation property. And that allows you to connect that database to any other database in your Notion workspace in a many-to-many fashion. So you can have many databases connected to many databases. It's not just a one-to-one. So this means that entries in database A can be tagged with a property or an entry in database B. So when you're entering your data in database A, there may be one of those columns of data related to database B. Over and above that, there's another property called rollups, and rollups can be used to display properties from the linked database in database B in line with a database A entry. So this means absolutely no transposing between databases, and from a filtering and sort of dashboarding point of view, which is where a lot of people use this as as the superpower, you have the ability to view your world and your data with what I think to be unrivaled levels of flexibility. So that's kind of the first component. That's the secret sauce to me. So I'll give you an example of how I use that. I have a part of my database called customers. So I've got a list of all my customers in a database block, right? And against the customer database, I have a relation called projects. And so against those project records, I tag the customer that the project is relating to, right? And so when I look at a customer, I can then do an inline database, which is kind of basically like a little block of view of that other database, pre-filtered for that customer. And it's dynamic. So whenever I add that customer to another project, that list updates. It's so powerful. And that's for me, that's the bit that's like, wow, that is game changing.
And also it allows you to, without integrating into like a CRM, because most businesses will have their own CRM that houses a lot of their customer data. It allows you to pre-filter what is relevant to you, which in turn makes you more productive, right? So you're not going to have however many clients your business has. You could have 500 clients. You might only be working with 3 of them. So why would you want to have a database and try and filter that down to 3? And why would you want to use all that computing power or your bandwidth trying to pull that data every time you want to look at it? So it's very personalized, and it really works for, it works in a solo aspect, and it also works really well collaboratively.
Agreed.
Because you can just share those pages with somebody if you were to sort of move on to a project with someone, which is great.
Yeah, totally agree. And you've touched upon something there that is really, really important, and something that I just want to expand on real quick, because yes, you're right. Lots of companies will have a CRM system, and what I've just described there is basically a CRM system, right? Mm-hmm. The difference is a CRM system will have a database with fields that you can complete, right? And those fields can be, whatever the business decides they want to capture. With Notion, and this is the bit that continues to blow my mind to this day, is that each of the database entries, each of the components, is also a page in its own right with all of the full functionality that any other master page would have. So, for example, in my database component piece, that database component has 5 entries, right? And one of those entries is a page. It's a full page with the full functionality. So in that page, you could have another database with a full set of records, or it can link to another database, or you could have loads of pages in there, or it could just be plain text. And you just can't do that with any CRM that I've ever seen. It blows my mind. You can basically do that forever. You could go on ad infinitum on that kind of structure. And I've never seen anything like that before in an app. I've seen database apps before, there's lots of them that are out there, but the combination of that database structure, but also just each of those entries being a full page that you can do whatever you want with. It's like you can build your own product, right? You can build your own product from the ground up without writing a single line of code. And, you can tell that I'm passionate about this, Dan. And it's just, it's crazy.
I know. Your hair's all flopping about. You look like Michael McIntyre. You're shaking about. Your hair's flopping everywhere. I mean, it's like having your own personal website. And I've hosted websites for my notes. I hosted a website called Short Blogs for a while, which is where I kept all of the interesting things I'd stumbled across when I was doing engineering. And it was nice. I had a nice picture of a server at the top, that sort of stuff. And it was really well formatted and I liked it. But the upkeep of it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because I'd built it in WordPress and it's like, I need to go and add a blog. And this Notion basically filled that gap for me in the sense that I could just have it locally installed on my machine. I could open it up on my iPad. I could open it up on my phone. I could open it up on my desktop and just add a new blog to it or a new page immediately. So I use the kind of website mentality where I've got like a home page and then I've got all of my pages for things that I need to do. All of them have a separate heading. Like this is for personal stuff. This is my work stuff. This is my finance stuff. This is my music stuff. And I just have relational pages and backlinks between them. So I kind of use it as a website, where you have like your home and about, but you'll always have like a home page at the top. So you can always click back into the splash page. So this is why I was so grateful when you kind of mentioned Notion and doing a bit more of a deep dive on it, because literally this week I tidied everything up. I had a completely separate work Notion, which was another account under another email.
Right.
So the way it would work is in the top left of Notion, you can hit a drop down. Like, how we do the Thrive Guys stuff, that's under your Notion as a shared page. So I still keep that separate and it's completely isolated from my workspace. But I had that for work as well. And it was like, we were going to talk about context switching at some point and it kind of was a part of that. And I actually removed it completely because I was like, I just need one Notion that contains all of the stuff I do. Anything from my work or from my personal life can sit in my personal Notion. Why do I have to have a work one?
Yeah.
There's not stuff that I'm putting in there that's, unsafe or insecure. I'm not storing passwords or anything like that because there's always that risk with any online cloud-based platform, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to be storing your usernames and passwords in it. You use a password manager. So, I mean, my journey started with Notion. When we first got introduced to it, I just used it as an internal wiki for my own documents, essentially to migrate away from, short blogs and from OneNote. And I wanted an easier to read format. Like when you're working with code and stuff, their inbuilt code function is crazy good. You just hit the / and then type code and you're like, that's what I want to type. It's going to be code and you can paste it in. Select the language that you're talking in or that you're coding in, so to speak. And it highlights all the words that are relevant to that type of code. So if you're putting SQL in, you can select SQL. You're looking at Python, you can select that. And for just sharing those notes is fantastic. Like somebody was asking me before about a little code block or how we run something. And I literally created a Notion article which had that code block. So it's like, this is the bit that's relevant to you.
Yeah.
The rest of it is a description on how it works and where you should run it and stuff like that. So it's nice to just be able to share like either a web link or you can export to HTML or PDF, however you want to do it. This is so flexible. That's like even just exporting pages has been of great value to me.
I mean, I'm not a coder. I don't know what code is. I can probably do a tiny little bit of SQL just from osmosis, right? But you're right. Some of the stuff that you've put in, you use quite a lot more of the aesthetic-y stuff than I do. I use basically headings and like bold and italics. I haven't really jumped down that too far.
I use toggle lists, headings.
Oh yeah, toggle lists.
Yeah, boy.
Chef's kiss. I do love a toggle kiss. Toggle kiss?
A toggle kiss.
I do love a toggle kiss, but a toggle list even better. So you started using Notion as an internal wiki for your own documents, and so you mentioned in the notes that the wheels were put in motion. Oh, in Notion. Oh, I see.
You've ruined the joke.
I ruined the joke. Sorry.
Get out of my
dad.
Show notes.
We can cut that bit. It's fine.
I don't want to cut it. I want people to experience the authenticity.
Oh no. So you've talked about kind of your journey with Notion. I guess for me, because I think we found it at the same time. I can't remember whether I think I told you about it. I don't remember.
Yeah. You sent a message into the chat. I don't remember it clearly, but I remember it being a very fiery chat because you were like, you have to install this. Have a look. And then we all started looking at it. And if I'm honest, I wasn't blown away when I first saw it because it was just a blank page. And adding stuff to it was heavy. It was a long process.
That's the biggest challenge, is that when you start, the biggest obstacle for actually gaining value from it is the barrier to entry, because it is just a blank page. I mean, I think it's obvious that I love Notion, right? I think that it has completely supercharged my productivity. And as I said last week, it has been probably one of the most important things that has meant I've had one of the best years of my career. And so before, I had a patchwork of systems that I talked about the other week, and it didn't exactly work for me in the way that I felt most comfortable, because it was designed by someone else and I was trying to work in terms of their methodology. And somehow, on one of my many YouTube rabbit holes that we all go down in life, I discovered a number of YouTube channels that showcased what was truly possible with Notion. So much so that I moved every other system that I was using and a bunch of new stuff that I didn't even know that I needed, right? This is the crucial piece. There was so much that I just wasn't doing that from watching these videos, I realized, I'm missing a trick here. There's so much that these people who have absolutely supercharged their lives are doing that I'm just not doing, and they're all using Notion to do it all, and it all interconnects with each other.
This is what I mean, though, is this is why when I started putting data into Notion, it was like the wheels were put in Notion. I know it's kind of a joke term, but literally, as soon as I started putting data into it...
The wheels were put in Notion.
Yeah, and as soon as I started getting, feedback internally regarding like how this looks, and it's so good to share like a wiki page with someone when somebody asks you a question and says, have you seen this before? Have you worked with this piece of technology? And it's like, well, I haven't worked on that technology for a couple of years, but here is an article I've written that defines what it is and how it works and my experience with it. And you can just share a page and they can click through it.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether they have a Notion account, if it's sent as HTML, they can just click through it and go, right.
Brilliant.
That's what, all right. Like I mentioned in an earlier episode, like a CLI guide that me and David had written.
Oh yeah,
and you can,
I remember.
Yeah, you can send that to someone and they could just click in and go, right, how do I do that? That's a page on its own. Let me go back to the homepage. All right, I need to check what the drive is. Let me just click, how do I do that?
Yeah.
It was so good. I also I jumped in feet first and just moved everything into Notion over the course of a couple of weeks, which is what I mean. It does take a long time. But then one of my colleagues I work closely with, I introduced him to it and I was like, look, we've got a project coming up. Let's just do it. Let's do it our own way and see if it works. And we were largely more successful. We'd done a huge upgrade that we hadn't done in support before. And we put everything in Notion. So everything was a task. And our task was to upgrade it over one weekend, which was a monster task. And I'm talking, we worked late. He would then take over and do an earlier shift from early in the morning and then hand it back over to me. And we kind of looped around with different engineers. And the way it worked is that we built our server list into an inline database and said, these are the servers that are being upgraded.
Yeah.
This is the current status. This is the note on that server. Did you have an issue, yes or no? Because somebody might have an issue and go, right, it's not a big issue, but it's worth highlighting. So they'd put a note on it, put the tick box next to it and just say, that's been upgraded, but yes, we have issues.
Yeah.
So then you could wake up and just, without having a phone call in the morning to say, right, guys, we need to catch up and sit on a 40-minute call talking about what you've done. I could just look in there and there's notes, there's comments, there's a tick box just to say, here's all the servers that are updated, so I know exactly where he's at. And same with the Kanban function. If there was an issue, we would add it to the Kanban board and say, right, that's not an issue that started. That's an issue that's in progress. So we could have theoretically gone through the whole project without having said a word to each other, other than the initial setup of Notion.
And that's what's incredible about the collaboration tools, right? I've only recently been using the collaboration tools with you, Dan. I don't use them with anyone else. My Notion is a very kind of singular, personal sort of environment. But actually, the collaboration functionality is brilliant. It is very, very good. And that's the bit which is probably less unique. I would imagine that there's lots of other products that do a similar sort of thing. However, it's to use your couple of your examples, you were talking about a database, which you would need to use something like Airtable or Asana or something like that. And then you're talking about a Kanban board, which again, maybe Asana, maybe Trello or something like that. And then you'd be having conversations and comments and stuff. That may be, I don't know, Slack or Teams or something like that. But you've actually kind of consolidated that entire piece into one page. Like this isn't like the whole product where you're jumping into different things. This is a single page as part of your wider ecosystem. Like when you really think about that, it's just crazy. It is crazy.
it's very shareable as well. I know we're talking about like it's a big input of data, and when I talk about this, it's a database and it's, you know, it's page within a page and it's got all this Kanban functionality and all this. You can still make it look pretty. Like we also had like a nice little header image of whatever. Let's say it was like the seaside, and we'd put the client logo on it. So if you had to share that to someone that wasn't a part of the project, and they wanted to know where you were at, you could share that with them and say, "This is where we're at with the project." Whether they know Notion or whether they understand Notion, you could send them a quick paragraph that says, "We are running this project in Notion. You can see all our actions here. There's your Notion page." They can look at whatever they want. You just make it so it's not editable. Bish, bash, bosh. They can have a quick look. They know what you're doing. They're happy, regardless of whether it's in your company format or whatever. I mean, like, obviously, I'd advise not to go against your employer or whatever. But if you find a way that works for you and it's successful, then try it. But that's the thing. I shared the Notion with my boss and said, "Look, this is how we're managing this. You know, if you have any questions, let us know." He's kind of like, "Well, if it works for you, then great. As long as they get the same output at the end of it."
Yeah, and Notion their market is enterprise and businesses and teams and stuff. So you may even want to try and convince your boss or your IT team to invest if you really see value in this. You know, that's kind of down to you. For me, it's been purely personal. I'm probably of everyone in my team, I'm probably the nerdiest by quite a long way. Geeking out over technology and stuff isn't really the sort of profile of a kind of a salesperson typically. So I know I'm a bit of an outlier here, but yeah, it works for me. And to be fair, I have to give so much credit to a YouTuber and content creator called August Bradley and his pillars, pipelines, and vault system he has created in Notion, because that's the basis of my system. And honestly, I can't stress enough how good of a resource August videos are for anyone who wants to get into Notion, but also anybody who wants to improve their quality of life, because the PPV system, I don't adopt it all and I don't adopt it fully, but I've picked the things that work for me. And actually, you know, using August's system as a baseline over time, you know, my system has massively expanded into the backbone of my entire workflow at work, and also my second brain for capturing everything I might need in all aspects of my life. And so, you know, if you want to, you know, we talk about open loops. We've probably talked about open loops on every single episode, right?
For sure.
This is the way I close those open loops effectively and efficiently every time. That, for me, has so much kind of intrinsic value that, you know, why do I love it? That's why. You know, that's it for me.
Hit the nail on the head.
You hit the nail on the head. And these different sources of information can be interconnected with the relations and roll-ups, or using backlinks, which are basically you hit two square brackets and then you can link to any page in your workspace in line in that page. And when you click on that link, it takes you to that block, right? It's not just to the page, it's to that paragraph of information that you've written. And that's amazing. And that is where Notion is kind of truly game-changing in terms of the value that it brings by connecting these components together. You know, August talks about emergence, and this kind of term resonates with me so much. It's about connecting the database and systems together, and how that creates new value that wasn't present in the component parts. So if I was to distill my love letter to Notion and love letter for Notion, it would be because of those things. You know, that'd be it. But I'm poring over this thing, and I'm kind of almost out of steam. So
this is 10 episodes in the making, Joe.
I know, right?
You know it.
Why don't we move on from why we love Notion and talk a little bit about where you're at with Notion right now in terms of, you know, what are you using it for? Let's get into some of the detail there. I know that we've talked about a couple of high level points, but let's kind of outline where you're at and what you're doing with it.
It would be an easier question to ask me what isn't in Notion. That's it. Everything I have, everything I am is in Notion, Joe.
Wow. That's quite a change from where probably we were. I mean, you're still using Todoist, boo. But, you know, one of these days you'll come to your senses and integrate your task management into Notion as well. But,
no.
Okay.
I will not.
Okay.
Well, maybe enough. I will. Let's review this in a few episodes and see where we're at. But I mean, I'm in a position with Notion where I maintain all of my audio clients, which is separate to my job. I maintain all of my guides. That's tech guides. That's anything I learn, like at all. If I join a training course, I'll take notes. I'll record snippets of it and I'll put it in Notion. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to sit there and constantly try and remember different commands or different pieces of software or bugs, whatever it is.
Right.
So I share all of my guides out via Notion. Like if anyone asks me a question, I will write a Notion on it. I speak to my team regularly and will say, like, have you come across any bonkers issues? Someone had an issue where one of the products we support wouldn't support an apostrophe in a last name. And it would cause that user to be logged out, and it just caused all sorts of issues. Not something I'd seen before. I was like, let's work on this. You know, it says quite clearly what the system message is, that the last name's not supported and why it's not supported. Let's just make a Notion on it. Done. It was a very quick article to say, look, apostrophes aren't supported in this version, and I added it to my overarching wiki that was for that product.
Yeah.
So it's like just a little additional page in there to say like common issues. There we go. Or issues we've experienced, and I can share that out with the team. So I've started exporting some of them to get them in our company SharePoint, because I understand like sometimes if somebody asks you for a quick piece of information, like sharing them a Notion link and then getting them to create an account or getting them to log in, and you know, sometimes it's a bit, I guess, troublesome for them if they don't have Notion. But yeah, so sometimes
there's a barrier to it. Yeah.
Sometimes I just export it and just say, there you go, there's your PDF. Just have a look. It's exactly how I formatted it in Notion. So there you go. Most recently, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I duplicated a splash page for my personal tasks, which is, you know, crypto, finances, weekly tasks, technology. And I split by page with toggle lists, and it just looks fantastic. And it's not my doing. I found it in the Notion VIP section, which we'll go on to in a bit, because the Notion community is fantastic. So I duplicated this splash page. I need to credit them because I can't remember who it was. I just found it was a free template.
We'll credit them in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 4 columns, work, personal, some other stuff. I'm not looking at it at the moment. I'm not going to delve into it. And I just went into each of those individually and thought, what do I need from these? And I started putting my weekly tasks in there, because I do maybe eventually want to move away from Todoist, but that's a big jump. But then like in my finances section, I've put like what I want my monthly budget to be and stuff like that. And I keep a page for each of them, just because I want to be aware of what I'm doing, what I'm spending, and why I'm spending. Because I'm an adult now. Like throughout all of my 20s, I've just spent frivolously because whatever. I'm young and I want to spend, but you got to consider your long-term goals, right?
Oh, for sure. And you're almost 30 now, aren't you, Dan?
Oh, for God's sake. I knew this was going to come up. Just because I set that emoji on your show notes to be an old man.
An old man with no hair.
Upset. Yeah, it's sounding more like it's me. I'm projecting.
I have longer hair than I've probably ever had in my life at the moment, because we've not been able to go and get the Barnet fair cut. And it hurt me, Dan. Anyway,
sorry.
I'm going to let you run on the community piece in a tick, because I think you're absolutely right. Where there's the power of the product and the power of the platform, but then it's the thriving community that make it something. And there's a lot of value in a thriving community around a development platform like this, I believe.
That's what was great for me in terms of like creating that crypto tracker. Like it helps me, but I would like to share that with someone. But I mean, I get it that it's very niche and people probably have their own ways of maintaining it. And these crypto platforms, whatever you're using, probably allow you to follow your investments quite clearly. But for me, I struggled, and it just filled that gap for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one other point really regarding where I'm at with Notion, and it's a big shout out for the Thrive Guys Notion that you created at the start, and it's kind of how we got this working. You know what they say about the Notion in the ocean. We start. Sorry,
I don't even know what that means.
Well, we got it moving, and we've got our rhythm. The way we work is we have the same methodology every week now.
Yeah.
How we want to present our show notes, how we talk about ideas, and how we get ideas to actually feature on the podcast.
Yeah.
We have like a backlog of ideas. I know what status the audio's in, because I know via the Kanban board whether it's in an editing state or whether it's ready to be published.
Yeah.
Or whether it is published. I can look at the Kanban board and go, right, Joe's still editing that one. You could even attach your link to that via Dropbox and just say, here's the file for it, instead of texting me or whatever.
Yeah.
There's so much inbuilt functionality that you can use. But we do all our planning, we do all of our documentation, and
We even run our website from there as well.
Exactly. And the show notes we're looking at now are in Notion.
Yes, they are.
It's like we do everything in Notion based, in Thrive Guys specifically.
Yeah, it basically runs the entire company, I suppose. Not that it's really a company; it's just a couple of bros. But we do everything on there, and the website's run from there. And the only thing that we don't have on there is we don't host, obviously, the audio on there because that's something that it's not quite there yet with. And to be honest, I don't think it's the best at managing documents. It's nowhere near as for a wiki perfect, right? It's really, really good. But if you've got like Word docs and Excel spreadsheets and things that you just can't do in Notion, and things that you can't, if I need to do a price calculator for something, or do a proposal, I'm not going to do that in Notion. I'm going to do that in Word. That's just going to be the way that we do it, and I'm going to PDF it and I'm going to send it to the customer, or I'll record a video of me doing a presentation of the costs, and that's not something that really Notion is kind of appropriate for. And storing all of that, I don't think necessarily that, well, for me in my own personal use case, I'd much rather have it in OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever, and have it as a nested folder system. I know we've talked about file management before, and I think there's a horses and courses sort of scenario. And I don't think that Notion is necessarily a document storage platform. I don't think it's what it's designed for, but that's just a point that I just wanted to kind of to sort of outline.
I think that, I just want to kind of follow up on that, because I started off that way, where I would grab some of my documents that were like template documents that I'd used before and put them in there for storage. But then I kind of thought, why don't I just open up that document, look at what's in it, and then put it into my Notion format so I can share it on as well, which is great. So you can do it, but the way it works is that if you've uploaded a document to it, if you want to view that, it's not like embedded as such.
You've got to download the document.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice if you just wanted to use it, but you probably already have a Dropbox or you have a OneDrive or whatever, which stores that already. So you are just doubling up your effort. Yeah.
And the other example was when we've got something on our internal Notion for the brand assets, right? And actually, it probably made more sense for us to have that in Dropbox, because the Dropbox system is kind of so heavily integrated into your Finder or your Windows Explorer that if you ever needed something, it's stored in the cloud, but you can just get at it without having to kind of download it and then upload it, and it's just there. It's ever present. And so there's some things that you could go full Notion and drop everything in there, but I always think that whilst I'm madly in love with this product and this toolkit, it's a horses for courses scenario. And you've got to use the best tool for getting the job done in order to be, prime effective, as effective as you can be in whatever it is that you're trying to do. So can I run through my behemoth use case for Notion? I think we might be here a little while. I don't know whether
I've got my water at the ready.
Yeah, so you could probably go and walk off if you wanted, to be fair. This is going to be another Joe Page monologue. So there is a lot to cover in my current sort of use of Notion, but probably the best way for me to do that is to outline the list of underlying databases that I have and then talk about the connections, because that's how I've structured the system. The system is, if I'm going to do an inline database, I'll have a database somewhere as a master and then link to that database rather than having it inline. Because one of the things that you'll realize when you're designing these things is actually, maybe I need that inline database I made on that page somewhere else, but in a different view. And actually doing a master database for all of the kind of the data that you want to capture and then link to that on the different pages is a much more kind of dynamic way of designing it. So just a piece of advice to anybody who's getting started, because I did it the old way to start with, and then I had to redesign the whole thing, and it was a little bit of a redoing of the system. So I have my CRM system, which I call CRM. I have my Wiki, the Learning Vault. I have cycles and reviews, and I have my home stuff. And within CRM, there's an actions database, a client project database, a go-to-market project database, a customers database, a contacts database, a meeting notes database, and a database called Hunting Ground, which is basically like a gap analysis. So it's looking at, okay, what of a particular customer, what do they have with us at the moment versus what could they have from us going forward, and that's kind of how we shape the account reviews that we do and the kind of account plans that we have with customers. It's a pretty common account sort of territory planning type system, but it goes over and above just the what products do they have, what products don't they have. It looks at, okay, well, when's their what competitive products do they have, when are those up for renewal, what's the impetus of kind of change, and what mode is that customer in? Are they in growth mode, are they in decline, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot there that I capture
that may not be captured on a company CRM, right?
No, exactly. That kind of stuff, that kind of nebulous stuff, is you never see it in CRM. You never see that sort of thing in a company Salesforce or something like that. But it's usually a rep will do it in a spreadsheet. And so actually, I don't want to do that in a spreadsheet. I want it to all be interconnected into the other databases. So that's why I sort of dropped that into Notion. Now, in my Wiki page, I've got a product database, what I call pre-sales assets, which are kind of like pre-recorded video content from our pre-sales team that I can then share to customers. So if there's a pre-recorded video of a product that a customer's interested in, I go into here, I find the link, and I send it over to them. I've got a database for email snippets and email templates. So, I always try and be consistent in my communication. And so if I've written a really good email about something, I'll save the text, and so then revert back to it later if I've got another query like that. And Notion has a really good feature, which is almost like Spotlight search on a Mac. So if you hit Command K, it's basically a global search across your entire database, your entire workspace, and you just type in what you want to find, and then it will go through and try and find the page that's most relevant to it. If only they can make it a little bit faster, but we're not going to talk about the bad things, because Notion can be a little on the slow side. But
I didn't know that there was a shortcut for that. So you're learning something new. So I always just click it. I mean, it's not difficult. It's in the top left. It's called Quick Find, and you can just click in the box and search what you're using.
Command K, so Command K.
Yeah, now I'm buzzing for it.
Any keyboard shortcut you can use, just to not have your hands move off of the keyboard, will make you quicker. So email snippets I've already talked about. I also capture like legislative information. So some of the products that we sell are need to be compliant with new legislation from like HMRC and stuff like that. So I capture like information and articles that I've found that might be relevant to those things, and then work skills. So LinkedIn stuff and any other article that I find that may be related to my skill set at work. And then I have another learning vault. So that's kind of a wiki for work. And then I have my own personal development sort of second brain.
So is Learning Vault something you've come up with?
No. So
okay, because that is awesome.
Yeah.
And this is what I like about it. I know you say you don't really get involved in sort of the way that the system looks and, some of the formatting, but calling stuff like that is so relatable to, for me as an engineer, like putting something up as like Wiki isn't attractive. Like having Dan's splash page isn't attractive.
Yeah.
So having that flexibility is something I really want to explore in terms of like I think you used August's template, which was Life OS, right? I assumed it was.
Well, I think I called it Life OS. His system is the pillars, pipelines, and vaults system.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
So the vaults component is the V of the PPV system.
Fine. Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's just like giving stuff names that make it feel personal to you and makes it feel like your own system. Like when I built the tracker, I sent it out to someone and just said it's called Stonks Tracker because I found that amusing. And it was just like I could send that out and it had my own language on it.
Yeah.
And it's not like a custom app or anything like that. It's just, it's basically a glorified spreadsheet, but it was nice to send it out in that format. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's it's a point worth. And I would say, Dan, go and watch August Bradley's videos. You will thank me later. And then you'll probably thank him as well, because honestly, the amount of meaningful content that he's pushed out around Notion and around actually just life improvement is something to be marveled at. So anyway, I'll stop gushing over August Bradley and crack on. So the next kind of section is cycles and reviews, and again, this is another part of the PPV system. So I do a daily quick review where I've talked about that before in terms of doing my gratitude and kind of planning my day, setting my intentions, etc. And I've already talked about my weekly review in a previous episode, but I also do a monthly, quarterly, and yearly review. The yearly review I've talked about in previous episodes where we talk about yearly themes, And again, that's not my original idea. That came from another podcast that I would implore people to check out called Cortex. Again, it's another Relay FM podcast, but they talk about, rather than doing a yearly resolution, doing a yearly theme, because it's a bit more sort of, vague in terms of, as long as you're trending in the right direction and, you're not putting any kind of, meaningful, measurable goals to a theme, then, it's a much better way of measuring improvement over time. And then within that, I have an achievements database, a disappointments database, and a goals and values databases. So goals I'm not going to go into achievements and disappointments because they're just something that I just capture every week. I don't really review those. But goals are measurable achievements that set myself up for success. So those are do X by Y, smart objectives that I set myself every month. And then values are the person that I want to be. So in my values, I've got, be a good friend, be a good worker, be a good colleague, be a good person, all of that kind of stuff. And it kind of, I try and sculpt my identity in terms of, okay, this is where I am now. This is where I want to be. This is my North Star in terms of, the Joe Page that I want to be. And then the home stuff is basically a bit more of a straightforward, okay, there's, what shows have I got on the slate that I want to watch? So if I'm ever kind of trying to find something on Netflix, I look at that and go, oh yeah, no, I forgot that I wanted to watch that, and then I'll watch that. And then I've also got a recipes database where I capture all of my recipes that I cook, and I tag those to each day. So in my days database, I've got a relation which is what's for dinner tonight, and then I tag that recipe in that field. So then every day I can see, okay, I've got I don't know, kebab and chips for dinner tonight, or whatever it might be.
Of course, it's kebab and chips, whatever it might be. He says,
it's always kebab and chips. So so as you can see, I do quite a lot in Notion. It's basically everything. I don't have any other apps that I really use. It's just that.
You've touched fantastically on how they kind of meld between your personal stuff and the professional stuff. Yeah. And it's still all just under one app.
Absolutely.
And that's what I have a list in Notion as well that contains all the films I want to watch. It's just a database, and I can tick it and be like, I've watched that. Nice, done, tick.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's also really, really good for your mental health. In terms of, you talk about how you put all of your achievements in there and your goals of who you want to be as a person. But that's not something I've explored until recently. Literally this week, and this is why I'm so grateful for that push back into Notion. I've been using it consistently, but I haven't done a deeper dive on it. I'm kind of this serves a function. I don't go, right, what could I do to improve this until this week? And I was like, you know what? There's loads of stuff I can do. And I stumbled across a page called Ultimate Habit Tracking.
Okay, yeah.
By someone called Notion Creature. I think they're at Notion Creature on Twitter, notioncreature.com. Cool.
We'll put a link to them in the show notes.
Yeah, no, it's really good because it's a fantastic thing that he's put together for himself, but it's awesome how it worked for me. And all I've done is duplicate the page and just start using it. So the way it works and why it's so brilliant is that you create a new page from a template every day just by hitting add page in your main dashboard. And that automatically includes 4 sections, which is thoughts, new knowledge, interesting events, or 5 events, habits, and gratitude. And I know we talked about gratitude, and I historically would just kind of think, or I'd write it down, or I'd add it to literally physically write it down in a notepad because it's I like writing stuff down. But now every day I wake up before I start work, I hit that plus button and I'm like, what are my thoughts? What new knowledge have I attained by the end of the day?
Nice.
What are interesting events that are going to happen today or have happened? For example, when I'm talking about that, I had a meeting with a charity about that song and getting it in the charts and all that. So that was an interesting event.
Yeah.
So I can always just look back and go, right, on this day, this happened.
Yeah.
And again, another section below that is the habits. So you can specify your habits in a relational database of what habits you want to do and when you want to do it. You tick the box for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever.
Yeah.
So I done it for I want to take my multivitamin every day. So I tick Monday to Sunday, and that just pops up in the page, and I drag it across to done.
Nice.
So you kind of get out of the Todoist way of thinking and working in the Notion way of thinking, which
Dan.
is
Welcome.
it's not ticking it off, but it's just dragging it across. So I put my Spanish lesson in there. I've started migrating it. I put my morning jog schedule. So I wanted to jog every other day. And what it does as well is it totals it up for consistency. So you can look at the end of the week and say, how consistent was I in achieving that goal?
So this is the power of emergence, right? This is the thing that August talks about. And I'm so excited for you because, you know, you're starting to move more and more things in Notion. And by connecting these things together, they become more valuable than the sum of their parts in the separate applications, right? So you were doing habit tracking in Streaks, you were doing, you know, tasks in Todoist, you were doing, you know, Wiki in Notion. But by connecting these together in a single platform, they then have emergent benefits by being connected to each other. So the things that aren't actually in the system, and you know, August is probably going to do a better explanation of this than me, but this is something that really resonates with me. The connectedness isn't actually a tangible thing, right? But the value that it delivers is tangible benefit. But it's not been designed. It's not like, you know, it's not the component. It's not part of the component list, right? It's not part of the bill of materials of what you've made. But because they're connected together, and you can surface up how they're connected in really interesting and powerful ways, that has its own intrinsic benefit that I can't see that you can get in a suite of other applications that, you know, don't really talk to each other, etc., etc. And you're starting to see that journey, so that's really interesting.
So here's one to sort of tack onto the back of that, is that you can add your own configurations to it in terms of as a property for each day.
Yeah.
So in my template now, I've added like a mood rating from 1 to 10.
Nice.
Because it was something we talked about before, and it was like, well, how do I feel today?
Yeah.
So you can look back and, like, you could look through a work week and go, I've been a 1 all week because I'm working, or, you know, and then it comes to a weekend, you're like, I'm a 10. But you've got to be honest with yourself and be like, what? And I also put a property that says, what was my reason for that, you know, rating that mood?
Nice.
Was it that I've had a particularly bad start to the day? Was it that I woke up late? Was it that I overslept? Or was it that somebody walked past me on the street and slapped me? You know, whatever. How, you know, whatever happens in your day, at least you can justify it and say, right, I felt this way at that particular time, which is historically not something I've tracked. You know, I've tried to keep a journal, and this I've used for the whole week, and I found it so easy to do, and it just becomes a part of that habit forming where I've just gone, before I start work, what do I want to achieve? At the end of the day, I look at it, even if it's before bed, I look at that same page and go, right, let me rate my mood. Let me put, what did I learn today? What's my new knowledge? What has happened today? Because no doubt every day you exist, something interesting happens, and you most likely learn something every day, and you are grateful for something every day. So writing that down, and like, as you said, doing win of the week is like such a good way to set up the podcast. It's such a good way to kind of live your life, is what have I done to, like, a win of the day, so to speak. You actually have to dig deep and kind of think, what am I grateful for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've really tapped into something here, which goes beyond Notion, right? So this goes beyond a toolkit or anything that you could potentially use, because one thing that we've probably all learned over the last 12 months, right, with all of the things that are going on in the world, is that you need to check in with yourself, and you need to do it regularly, right? You need to check in with yourself, and you need to check in regularly, because, at least for me, it's very easy to get bogged down with the negativity of outside influences, but also internal influences as well. It's very easy to fixate and, back to episode 2, ruminate on you know, things like failing, things like distractions, things, you know, all of these things that we've talked about over the last kind of 2 months, right? It's very easy to do that, and you know, your brain will almost divert to those as like a natural instinct, right? Which is crazy. But sitting down and spending time thinking about what you're grateful for and what you've learnt today and where you've won today, you know, regardless of how small it is, you know, because sometimes I'll get to the end of the day and be like, have I actually won today? Or did I just get my backside kicked, right? And by and large, there'll be one little glimmer of hope where you go, that went well, that bit, all right. And it may even be, you know, I managed to take a break and actually have some lunch and take a little bit of time for myself today. Or it may be something like, you know, I managed to get out for a walk today, and the cold air on my face felt really refreshing.
Now you're just peeking into my diary.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So
I didn't share that page with you. How'd you find it?
Kerry reads your diary every day and texts me all the really embarrassing stuff.
Of course she does.
So I've got ammunition. How do you think I know so much about your inner thoughts, Dan? It's cold and calculated.
That is cold and calculated. That was what I described my walk as. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So I think putting Notion to one side, right? That's so important. Bringing Notion back in, though, it's a fantastic way to record that, but then connect it to the other things that are happening in your life. So the example that you used around this ultimate habit tracker, you could be connecting that to other parts of your life. So it could be that you're connecting it to a project. So if one of your wins of the day was smashed out this project, it's a square bracket linked to that page, and so that when you review that, you go, oh, what was that project? Oh, let's click in. Oh, yeah, no, I see that. And this is what I did. And yeah, these were the bits that were cool. And it just brings up all of those memories again.
I did exactly that. I just mentioned that we had a chat with some of the guys regarding the song and charity and all that sort of stuff. I literally took the song that it was a part of, because I have in a Kanban board the song and what status it's in. I think I discussed that before, where I have whether it's in recording, editing, whatever state it's in, whether it's released or whether it's mastered. And I had that Kanban little page that was embedded and just linked it to that. We had a conversation about this song and it was this artist.
Yeah.
Because I create an artist page for everyone I'm working with. As soon as we, even if we have a conversation, I'll create a Kanban board, and the default is that it's a discussing phase, recording, mixing, mastering, editing, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
So even if we have a quick conversation and somebody says, oh, I'd be keen to work with you at some point, I'll add a page.
Yeah.
And that's it, because then I know that I can follow up on that tangible action, which is...
Yeah, they're a prospective client.
Yeah, we might not ever work together, but we've had a conversation and this is what we discussed. So when it does come back to it, I'm confident in what I'm saying, and I know where we were or why it didn't work before, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
And learning from those mistakes.
This is, for me, like the value proposition of Notion entirely from start to finish, right? The power of emergence. Because they're actually, in its component parts, there's lots of products out there that do note-taking. There's lots of products that do task management. There's lots of products that do Wiki. And actually, there's other products that do things like backlinking and things like that. Like, there's Roam Research, which is a different take on this sort of thing. And then there's a few others as well, like Craft, which I showed you, which is a really beautiful app. Like it's probably Notion adjacent, but because it doesn't have databases, it just makes it so far behind, and something that I did actually consider maybe I could use Craft to move to, because it's a much more native experience, from a iOS app, iPad app, Mac app point of view, versus kind of a web app, which is essentially what Notion is. But because it didn't have the functionality like the databases piece, it just wasn't there enough for me yet. And actually, because Notion is in a position now where it just feels like it's hurtling at a rate of knots in terms of new features and things like that, it feels like a good place to put your eggs. Do you know? And talking about putting eggs, I guess we could talk about what we are planning to do next with Notion. I'm going to let you start, because I don't know what I'm going to do next with Notion. So I'm going to let you give me some ideas.
Pass me the keys, I'll drive.
Pass you the keys. Jesus takes the wheel.
So, I mean, I've got a question here to myself, which is, what am I most excited about? I wanted to think about what am I looking forward to with Notion.
Right.
Because we're currently in a situation where, we've discussed it many times, we're in lockdown, so it's a very different way of working, different way of existing. So I'm excited to actually get to a point where we have an opportunity to go traveling. So maybe by the time this podcast airs, we'll be able to travel. We'll be able to go to different places, because, we work in advance. Because there's like nice little holiday templates you can use, which are inbuilt into Notion, where you could store all of your holiday destinations. You can store bookings. You can store, who your insurance is with, what your hotel location is, what, memorable locations that you want to go to, or, sites that you want to see. And I'm excited to be able to use that page and like share that Notion page if you're going on like a group holiday or a shared holiday where you go, right, does anyone have any sites that they want to go and visit? They could just whack the link in there, and you could even just put like a rating system. This is like top of our list where we want to go.
Yeah.
Maybe it sounds like I'm a bit pedantic. I'm not that much of a planner. You know me, I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to just have like a database of places that I want to visit, because I keep talking about, I'd love to visit this place. I'd love to visit that place. But I haven't got any evidence of that.
No.
Like me and Kerry have been to so many places, and it'd be nice to have like a record of where we went, where we stayed. So when it comes to maybe 10, 15 years down the line, we go, oh, do you remember we went to Portugal? I'd love to go back there.
Yeah.
Wherever we went, I would love to just be like, oh, we stayed at that hotel. You could look it up. It might be shut down by that point. It might have been renovated. Who knows? But you just know where you were at that point in time. So you have something really nice to reflect on. You could even put like a link to your Dropbox where you could have all your photos, or you could have your photos embedded if you wanted, just to, to store those memories. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. That's what I'm excited about. And, shared holidays will be vastly more easy. We'll see.
Well, that all depends on people actually using it.
Exactly.
I'll remind you of the time where we went on holiday to, I think it was Kent, or it was the one before. I think it was the Cotswolds, and I created a shared note that I invited everybody to. This was just Apple Notes, because doing it in Notion was just not going to happen, because
it was unheard of at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And literally, Kerry logged in and did nothing, and no one else actually did it. So I would temper your expectations somewhat
for sure.
with our friendship
It's
group.
About adaptability and adoption.
Yeah.
If you can get your friends to adopt it and use it, it is daunting. I keep talking to Kerry about using Notion. But how do you say to someone, download the app, install it, have a look, and then, by the way, just input everything you ever know and everything you ever want to know. Just pop that in there.
Yeah.
Any projects you're excited about, just pop them in there. It's a very daunting task. And it's not really a negative. I can't really slate Notion for that.
No.
It's just, it is daunting, especially when you talked about moving to craft. Like, I would love to give it a go and move some of the stuff, but you kind of want to jump in head first and just do everything and be like, I'm going to manage my life from craft for a bit and see how it goes, versus I want to manage my life in Notion.
And it's just not possible, because it takes so much effort to do that, right? I totally get what you're saying. The other fundamental challenge, right, is I think you have to have almost a systems mindset. And if you're just, not that way inclined, like Kerry and like Kaylee and, others of our friends and maybe even some of our listeners, and they just want to be given something that they are taught how to do rather than crafting your own system, then I think Notion has a massive learning curve. It's really simple once you get your head around it, but that initial and actually one thing that we've not touched upon is the templates that they ship with Notion. So you could actually just use the templates that Notion already give you, and there's loads of them that you can choose from. There's like a whole CRM, there's like an applicant tracking system, there's like a journal system, and I've used some of them because actually it's like, well, I use the template for journaling, and it's fine. It's just pages with dates. What more do you want, right? And I think for some people those might be enough, but you can also create your own templates that, for example, with my projects database, every time I create a new project, I have a project template, and I just click one button and it creates all of the fields and all of the link tables with all of the pre-filtering and things like that, and it's just done, and it's like, amazing, love it.
Oh, also, for our Thrive guys, I created a template. It's just hidden.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hidden.
I've hidden a template because I was going to literally show you it and explain it to you, which is kind of in the heading format that I was talking about.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, we should definitely explore that at some point.
Exciting. And yeah, our every episode that we do, we have a template we don't really use, but there we are. So I think for me, in terms of my next steps, if I'm honest, I don't have much else in my life that I could put into Notion. I think basically everything is already there that needs to be there. The only thing that I am thinking of isn't possible right now because the API hasn't been released. But when the API is finally here, I am very excited about being able to sync my calendar with Notion as there is a bit of hand cranking involved in getting all of my scheduled appointments into my action items database. And so getting some automation into the product, I think will take it to that next step. And that's going to be exciting. I think that's been in development their end for quite some time, and I know is a priority for them, as well as offline mode, which for me isn't that much of a benefit. I'm not really that fussed about offline mode, but it has some benefit. I think I need to redesign some parts of my system because I've recognised that some bits of it I don't use in the way that I thought I would use them. And I can probably trim a lot of the fat, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. That's what I've done this week, and it's a big relief when you have been embedded in a product for so long, and then you kind of take a step back and go, well, what could I do better? It really helps refresh the mind, and I've rebuilt mine with like just a single focus, which is that I want to have a splash page that I load up every morning,
right?
And from that splash page, I can find anything else I need. Instead of using the little taskbar on the left, I just want one big old page that says, "Here's all of your stuff, Dan.
Yep.
What do you need?"
It's a much better way of doing it than having just the bar on the left. And because Notion is so flexible, you can just have like a dashboard where you just go, right, these are all the bits and pieces that you can jump to, etc. The only other thing that I'm thinking of is I want to try and use the new timeline view in some way because I just really like the look of it. I think it looks cool, but I haven't quite worked out what my use case is for it yet. So that is a to-do. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I'm really happy with the way things are. So, I mean, you've talked a little bit about the holiday destinations piece, but is there anything else that you want to do with Notion going forward? Maybe put your tasks in there?
No, not yet.
Maybe
because
get off of Todoist?
Well, their to-do list function is just a simple tick and it's gone. It's not like repeatable, like do this. And again, this is when I first looked at it. But the reason I still stick with Todoist is that I can do the natural language where I say, do this every day or do this every Friday. Yeah, exactly. And if that was embedded, then for sure, because I just like being able to go into Todoist and I say, I need to do the bins every Thursday. Just type that bins every Thursday, whatever it is, and assign that under my personal tasks and it's done. Or, you know, I have a Todoist that pops up every Friday evening that says, do Five Guys notes with 4 subtasks, which is win of the week, content. I think it contains audio and some other stuff, in terms of sending the audio. So I start it on a Friday and then I just swipe it and go, I'm moving that to tomorrow because that's when I'm going to finish setting up the audio and sending it across and stuff. But my next steps, I mean, are kind of how I want to maintain Notion, because it's all well and good saying we've put all this new good stuff in it, but I've got, for my next steps, I'm saying this because I want to be accountable. I'm going to continue to maintain my Notion and create more and more guides that can be shared in relation to work. Right. That's one of my goals. Like, I started doing it and I do it quite well, but I want to have more guides and I want to reach out to people and say, what stuff do you struggle with? Yep. Take that, either automate some of it or have it in a readable format that's like, this is your webpage, which contains more about that instead of just having like a .txt file on someone's desktop, because that's how engineers work. They're like, oh, that was interesting, let me write it down, or let me put it in Word.
SQL file.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm asking colleagues about difficult issues they faced and just trying to store a record of certain resolutions. And essentially it feels like I'm building my own knowledge base, which is something I've wanted to do. But we have like a solutions tab in the product we use for maintaining tickets. So it might be that I migrate some of it to that. But it's like, for me, I want to get personal value out of it as well as give that value back to people. Yeah. I'm also planning on creating my own Spanish page because, I keep banging on about Spanish. I love the language. I'm working to learn it and to get conversational with it. So I want a page that I can potentially share with people that contains the basics. So if you did ever go on holiday, and that would be in relation to my holiday destinations page, if I'd put Spanish there, I'd have Spanish basics and you could go in there. It's a backlink. There you go. There's your basics. You don't have to Google it. You don't have to have a little book. Perfect. There was one other thing. I actually filled in, I know we talked about goals and themes. Mm-hmm. I haven't really decided on my themes for this year. I just haven't, because it was something I was only introduced to early in the year. And I wanted to kind of assign some themes to this year, but I've got a goals tab in Notion, which came as part of that template that I duplicated as a splash page. Yeah. So I filled in the goals tab, which is like my longer term goals, which are to maintain my automated bot, because I've built quite a lot of function into it, and it's like I want to keep that ticking over and improve it instead of just going, right, I've built a bot, or I've automated some of these emails that go out and document creation. I want to keep a track of that and say, this is what I've done, and have got like actual targets that I can reflect on. I want to maintain my audio business. Like it's not about the money. I'm not making huge amounts of money, but I want to make progress, and I want to keep track of the projects I'm working on. It's not like I'm going to leave my job for it kind of thing. It's not like at that state, but I like having the maintenance of it and keeping track of what projects I've worked on, and just maintain my knowledge base.
Right.
So that was a very long answer to a quick question. My next steps are continue what I'm doing.
Same old, same old. Yeah, more of the same, please, Mr. Short. Today's love letter to Notion has been a very enjoyable conversation, Dan. I've very much enjoyed spending time with you, gushing over this productivity platform. Hopefully someone that's listening has found some value to this and will maybe pick up Notion and go, maybe this can work for me in some limited or maybe not so limited capacity. Do you have any final thoughts on Notion before we let everybody crack on with their weekend or week or whenever they're listening to it?
I took the title very literally when you said a love letter to Notion, and I would like to finish off this episode by reading my letter, if I may.
I mean,
as I said, I took this very, very literally. So two different people, opposite ends.
You are an engineer, aren't you? You get given a task and you complete the task literally in every sense of the word. Go on, read your letter, Dan. Go on.
I feel a bit embarrassed now, but dear sweet, sweet Notion, for what you have done for me, I am eternally grateful. You have allowed me to succeed in setting up a side business and allowed me to track what is truly important to me. You've allowed my work notes to flourish in a way that I had always wanted and in such an amazing way. Yours truly, Dan, 29 years old.
I love the 29 years old.
I wanted reference of it.
Usually people who are under the age of 5 sign off their name with their age, but you've gone 29 years old. Love it.
I'm dropping off. I'm going. I'm finished.
I don't know.
My career's over.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our show. And if you really, really liked it, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out, helps us grow our audience. So, only if you loved it, but if you did, then that'd be really good. If you'd like to hear more from Dan or myself, please follow us on Twitter @ThriveGuysPod. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day.